I'm Nick Muxlow. I'm an author, a speaker, and an ultramarathon coach. I specialise in helping endurance athletes get run fit so they can finish with a smile. Oh yeah, I'm a Dent coach. I developed my RunFit Method, which transformed my pitch. I've written 3 books, Journey to 100, Journey to Kona, and RunFit. Doubled my fees. I've launched the online membership, and I've launched the RunFit scorecard. Now coach runners locally, interstate, and overseas. And I've now got total location freedom. I can work anywhere in the world. I give back to the community of ultra runners by planting trees, lots of trees, all around the world. And I'm a proud member of B1G1. My vision is for athletes to realise that anything is possible. They can achieve far more than they ever thought they could, both on the trail and in their life.
Nick Muxlow, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Hey, Glenn, thanks for having me.
Mate, I'm stoked. And when was the first time you ran 100 Ks or more? And what on earth possessed you to do that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a long way, hey. So it was probably, to be 5, 6, maybe even 7 years ago now that I did my first 100K. Done a bunch of endurance events, originally triathlon before that, 50 Ks, and then finally stepped up the distance at what is Australia's largest ultra race, Ultra Trail Australia. And yeah, had a blast out there, but I tell you what, the course lived up to its name. 100K through the Blue Mountains with the steps, the hills, the water, absolutely being torrential, the rain. It was just fantastic, an absolute adventure. So,
and how fast are you going? Are you like running the whole time? Is it running and walking and kind of like powering up hills, or like paint a picture?
It's a combination of all of the above. So, there's definitely bits that you're running, then there's bits that are, so steep that you've just got to walk it. When you're coming back up into Katoomba for the first time, the hill's so steep that you actually, I remember going up there and I'm like, wow, I'm walking and I'm just working too hard. So I basically had to stop and just bring the heart rate back down because you just can't sustain that for 100 Ks. And then you get to the flat roads and you're off running again. And yeah, it's everything that you could imagine. So no, I didn't run the whole lot. No one actually runs the whole lot. And then, yeah, the last car, I don't know, you've probably been to the Blue Mountains. You're not far from there. So we got the further steps for the final 1K. You start at the bottom and the 99K mark to 100 Ks, you're basically going vertically through to the top, which is, sorts you out, that's for sure. So it's a bit of a fun finish.
How long does it take? How long are you going for? Because it's not, you don't stop and have a nap, I'm assuming.
No, definitely no naps allowed. So I can't actually remember my finish time. So if you go under 14 hours,
6 hours? Is it 10 hours? Is it 20 hours?
No. So you're doing real well if you're in under 14 hours. That gives you what they call a silver buckle. And I think I was about 12 and a half hours that I was out there. Others will be, I'd been home, slept, came back the next day, and the people who were at the back of the field were just finishing. So they were walking in absolutely wrecked. So yeah, it's just something that if you can even get to the finish line, just to experience it is just magical. So
I think, and look, with some certain books I've read, or just knowledge accumulated, it seems to be some people tend to either gravitate to no exercise at all. They tend to gravitate to like endurance type stuff. I've got a bunch of mates that run marathons and do all that sort of stuff. And then there's people that sort of prefer like the high intensity, like HIIT training or like lifting some weights or things of that nature. Like, have you found a similar sort of spread amongst people that they sort of gravitate, or do you do a bit of a combination of them all?
Yeah, I definitely think, you get people that gravitate absolutely to the different sort of extremes. as from a training perspective, obviously in a performance perspective, we definitely bring all that in. So like this morning, I'm lucky to have a home gym in the garage. Basically went and did my weight session because I knew I couldn't do it this afternoon. So I bring that into the running that I do. That's a massively important part. Obviously there's a huge amount of running. Some of it's at quite an easy intensity and some of it's at a high intensity because you get different training adaptations at all sorts. But I guess the commonality is the wanting to push your comfort zone and find out, what you're truly capable of, and find out what's on the edge. So
what kind of weights did you do this morning?
So I did squats, deadlifts, bench press, calf raises. Calves are massively important for runners. That's super important. So it's all with a running focus, but absolutely got out there.
So you're not trying to just lift super heavy, but you're conditioning for running. Is that so? There's a special.
Yeah. So we're wanting to make sure like we do lift heavy, but it wouldn't be heavy like a bodybuilder lifts heavy. So we're not trying to bulk the muscle up. Obviously, you've got to carry it with you around the course. So we want strong muscles without the bulk. And so, that's where the weight training is really starting to become a really important part of the holistic training program. So
when did you first start getting called to this sort of endurance stuff? Because of course, before your first 100 triathlon, etc., like where did it come from?
Yeah, so I actually was sitting on the lounge room floor when I was about, I must have been sort of 6, 7, 8. And I happened to see, little did I realize what it was at the time, the Hawaii Ironman on TV. And I went, I'm doing that one day. And I made a promise to myself that I was going to do it. Little did I know that was actually quite hard to go and do. So when I became old enough to buy myself a bike, when I finished year 12, started triathlon, and that ended up becoming where I progressed through to and just absolutely loved it. And so it sort of just blossomed out of that. I was always a runner. I played lacrosse as a youngster. I kind of figured kids don't necessarily run as, the only sport they do, but put me on a lacrosse field, I'd be belting around. And so it was, quite a natural progression to then, come back to just the adventure side of it, the being outdoors and just the pure running. So I guess it's always been there. And it's just, evolved that endurance side of things through to the 100K. And I dare say in a few years, it'll be longer than that. So for people like me that don't really understand much about the world of kind of endurance, long kind of running, I mean, I've seen a bit of Goggins, I've seen a bit of Cam Hanes, like running, just doing insane stuff on Instagram, really long runs, all that sort of stuff, etc. But there are some very much, there are some real, I guess, famous ones, aren't there? Like Kona and all that kind of stuff. Just, you want to paint us a picture of what, for those that don't know, what the world of endurance running looks like? Because it's often on the road, it's often on trails, Yeah. So I guess you've got like the triathlon side of things, which is really where Hawaii comes in, and so that's an Ironman distance. So that's a 3.8K swim, 180K bike ride, and then a marathon run. And so they're different spots all around the world, with the pinnacle being that you have to qualify for Hawaii. That's the Ironman World Championships. And then you've got, I guess, the other side, which is really the pure running. So you've got obviously marathons all around the world, or the big 5. And then you've also got the ultra running, which is an ultra marathon's anything over the marathon. So you've got a bunch of 50Ks, and they could be, in the backyard. They're literally everywhere in the world. And then you've got the 100Ks, and then really the 100 miles. And then beyond that, you've got kind of just crazy stuff like, I was coaching a guy to a 200 miler, or you've got like a 240K coast to Cozy. Okay, so you've got all sorts of other stuff that people have come up with, but really, I guess the key distances.
People run from the coast to the top of Kosciuszko.
Yeah, it's a race, and
so
you need to be invited.
I live at the bottom of Kosciuszko. takes 2 hours to drive to the beach, 2.5 hours to drive to the beach, running that. Oh man, that's mental.
So, yeah.
Has the guy that you're coaching done his 200?
No, I didn't quite do the 200 miler. So that's been postponed. But yeah, it's, stuff's just been up in the air a little bit with COVID and whatnot. So down the track, I look forward to basically supporting him on that. The other, I don't know if you've actually heard of this, the other thing that'll probably blow your mind is there's now a race format called the Backyard Ultra, which is a format where you do a loop, which is like a 6.7K course. The reason it's that distance is because you can actually divide 100 miles by 24. That's what you get to, and you have to do it on the hour, every hour. And if you're not in the start pen, you're a DQ. And so basically you literally go until someone finally is the last person to do one lap. So it goes for days and days and days. So basically you get a wooden spoon because everyone's a DNF. So yeah, it's an absolutely weird and crazy format that the world record was absolutely obliterated probably a month ago. Two guys they were there a week until one of them gave in. So
literally there's only a winner. There's no top three. You're either disqualified because you quit or you win.
Spot on.
Oh.
So you're a DNF, in which case you get a wooden spoon, or you won the event.
I did not finish. Got it. DNF. Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, DNF.
I'm getting my head around all the acronyms. Athletic activities. It's never I've got my gym in the shed that keeps me not obese, but that's about it. Obviously, you're coaching people, and I mean, you've turned that into a rocking business. When did the coaching start? How did that come about?
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting. So I've coached all my life, originally as a lacrosse coach, but it was never something that I could get paid for or see how I could get paid for. So I actually made a logical decision to kind of do what I saw as the next best thing and become a PE teacher. And so then I was in basically looking for a job because I was just on contracts and ended up in a classroom. And I'd at this stage been, doing all the ironman side of things and the triathlon, and sort of thought, oh yeah, down the track I'll coach athletes. But what was really then the crunch moment was I had this class and it was pretty average. And I didn't really feel that I had any support from the leaders. So basically I couldn't get a job. I didn't have support from the leaders, and I have something that I really believe in, which is to focus on what's in your control. And so I went, well, at the moment, this is out of my control. The other thing I can do is coach. And so they actually basically threatened to put me on performance review, which for anyone that knows me is just kind of absolute, it's just rubbish. It was just their way of kind of, trying to deal with a crap situation. And so I decided that I'd start coaching, and I didn't know how I was going to make it work. I just knew that before I hit the bottom, I'd opened the parachute and worked it out. And so that's basically what forced me to jump ship. And so, yeah, I literally changed my career and went from being a teacher to now being a running and triathlon coach, but more and more just a running coach. So
these days, right, when someone asks you, what do you say? What's the pitch?
I basically say that, hi, I'm Nick Muxlow. I'm a running coach. I coach runners to finish 50 and 100 kilometer ultramarathons and finish with a smile.
Yeah, right.
So,
awesome.
Yeah, I find that basically saying, the 50 and 100 Ks, it's just the endurance stuff's what I love. Even though I work with a bunch of marathon runners and things now, that's where I really started to make the traction. And yeah, just the irony of being able to finish that far with a smile just means that whenever they come and work with me, they're like, I want to finish with a smile. And it's like, yep, that's what I can allow you to do. So it's fantastic.
Now, you've one of the big things that I saw you build out was, your principal methodology, the specific kind of essential ingredients, if you like, to being able to achieve that outcome, right? To finish a 50 or 100 with a smile. Now, did you come in with that, or was that a new innovation? Do you just want to kind of walk us through that process? Because that's a pretty key piece of IP now, right?
Oh, it's massive. It's one of the key things that's really transformed and transitioned everything that I do. I guess as I said, business wasn't easy for me to start off with, and I was propping myself up. So even before I joined the program, I was attempting to implement the Dent methodology on my own. And you used to run the program only in Sydney. And so you probably might recall, I'd basically rock up with my suitcase because I had to fly myself there, and I had to fly in the night before because I couldn't even get on the red eye to make it in time for the session. Obviously get accommodation, and then basically attend the session. Then I get the last kind of flight back to Adelaide in the afternoon. So for me to actually attend, I had to have more disposable income. So until I got to that point, I basically needed to really make sure that I had the ability to do that. So I was actually implementing the Dent method. Got your book, obviously, and I'd read them all, and I'm like, cool. I'm a teacher, I can do this on my own. And then I'm like basically trying to do it. And I'm like, it's just not quite landing. And so obviously I wanted to join the program. And then when I finally could, I did. That's where I then had to just tweak and just refine it. And just, it's those 1%ers here or there where you're just tweaking things that just makes all the difference. And then it basically sort of landed. So it was in development before, but it then kind of ended up sinking in when I was on the program.
So for someone that doesn't know what we're talking about, just kind of explain a bit about like if I'm a potential runner coming to you going, I want to finish 50 or 100 Ks with a smile. Just try and reverse engineer a bit of that process in terms of the key steps and stages, but also a bit of your journey and experience in developing that from scratch.
I guess for me, I have to always look back, because I see that as an expert in our field, we often forget where we've come from. And so I had to kind of go right back to the start of my own journey as a triathlete. And really that was then what kind of ended up being, the cornerstone of that I had different mistakes I'd made. I'd worked with different coaches, and I'd basically seen different ways that coaches had worked. And I recognized that different coaches had left different parts out. So I really started by brainstorming it down onto, I'm a big brainstormer. I love the big mind maps. So I put it all down onto the biggest bit of basically butcher's paper I could find, or workbook, and then just this massive diagram coming out. And then I just grouped all the different areas together, and then I started to look for the common themes. And then when I had the common themes, basically they then became the different areas. And it was ultimately that became my first book, Journey to 100. And then through, I guess, the writing of my first book, and then, starting, bringing it together even further, I then came to what is actually now the RunFit Method. So it's only purely through my teaching background, my personal background as an athlete, and also then working with, over, hundreds of athletes, that I could then see the common mistakes they made and just pull it all together into a holistic approach to actually improve your running.
And what's the RunFit Method?
So the RunFit Method is basically my method to allow someone to get run fit, which is really, it embodies the fact that, you're doing it for more than, running is more than just a race. Okay. Running is the whole lifestyle that goes with it as well. So I sort of unpack that. And then we've really there's 4 key parts. So there's the game plan, there's the mindset, there's the skills, and then there's the fitness. And so what basically happens is most runners only focus on the fitness, and they just forget the whole big picture. And so that's why we need all the other parts, because collectively it all contributes to you finishing with a smile.
What was the first book like? what was that process like going through the published piece and kind of sitting down and going, right, I've got to articulate this. I've got to get it out there in the world.
Yeah, I charged. I guess that's kind of the way I do things. And so I had like a really detailed plan at the time. I actually had read one of your, Jackie Preddy's, who was a key personal influence book. So she basically, I guess, followed her guidance there. And from that, basically, I had this great plan. And I was just like, okay, I've just got to start writing at the top and I won't finish until I get to the bottom. And little did I know that it's actually a bit of a behemoth. It's like 55,000 words, plus then all the training plans on the end. So it's a massive book. Whereas, most books kind of in, the entrepreneur kind of space are normally around that 25 to 35,000 words. So it was sort of double. And I didn't realize that until after. I was just like, oh man, like this is hard work. So yeah.
How long did that take from start to finish?
So I started, all the planning I'd done prior, and I started writing on New Year's Day by recollection. And I had a goal of finishing it by my birthday was my goal. So I booked in my date with my editor, which was 24th of March. Okay, little did I realize that I'd need a little bit longer. And so that was all I did each day, because as I said, I was a teacher back then. So I had summer holidays. So I'm like, cool, summer holidays, write a book. And so, yeah, I got to pretty much the week before, and then I just emailed them and I was like, guys, I'm just not quite going to get there. I just can't physically do this unless I was to pull like all-nighters. And so I then basically said, when could you book me in again? I've got, a couple of chapters to go, etc. I've got to read through it again. And then got the next date and I just put it down for like 2 or 3 weeks. I was just mentally cooked. Like I burnt that fuse. And so I put it down and then, basically picked it back up sort of 3 weeks later and then just kept writing it until I got it done. We got it through to that end of the first draft, which is, that's the big step when you break the back of that first draft.
Do you have any particular little things that you developed to help you kind of get in the zone? Like, is there a space you created for yourself? Is there a ritual that you took yourself through?
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, all my books I've written in a different way. So the first one was pretty much just charging, and I was actually a massive fan of Pomodoro. For anyone that doesn't know, it's literally a timer. But I'd go to the cafe, I'd order a coffee, I'd sit down, and I didn't know how many times I had to hit the button to start like 20-minute increments. But I just knew that eventually it would stop. So I just basically would sit down at the cafe and literally just do as many as I could. And I kind of find that I get through, potentially 3 or 4, because it's such high level work in a day. And then I basically have to go do something else. And I basically just repeated that process again and again. And then by the time it came around to finishing it, I was actually back working. So I was full-time teaching. So I'd get up and I'd actually go to the cafe before work. So I basically, go there, write for an hour and a half. I'd then finish work and I'd then start writing again, go back to the cafe afterwards or come home and write it. So it was just literally sheer grit and determination. GSD, as you would say.
Done. 3 books, man. That's pretty cool. What was it like when the first book came out? I know some people, they don't do a book launch. Some people do, just depending on their strategy. How did you do it? And what was the response like? What was it like afterwards? Can you remember some of the first experiences of people kind of recognizing you as an author?
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, but you just like, I haven't changed. Like I'm still Nick. I'm still the same guy. Like, but yeah, I did like a small book launch because I was pretty chuffed, obviously. So I just invited the family and the close friends along, had it at a cafe. So yeah, not really I didn't actually have a business basically at that stage. I wrote the book to get the business. So that's kind of where that happened. The interesting thing is it's not the wrong book, but it's not necessarily wasn't the right book because I didn't have the methodology completely unpacked in it, which I've now done in Get Run Fit or RunFit. So while people loved it, like the number of people that I've had email me, speak to me that have said like, I've read it twice. It's my Bible. They'll show me like photos of it and they've got sticky tabs all out of it. Like it's exceptional. But for me, transferring careers, it was a book that allowed me to really unpack my methodology and get to what I just discussed beforehand. I couldn't have got there without having written the 2 books that came before it.
Had to get it out of your head to create space for the new innovation. And how did it transform business?
It's the problem was it didn't. Okay, so interestingly, it's a great book. Okay, but that's now the book that I give to people when I start working with them. Okay, because it's the book that saves me like hundreds of hours of conversation. The book that's changed the business is Get Run Fit or RunFit. Okay, and that's the one that I unpack my methodology. And that has just blown the house down. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess that's the chalk and the cheese. So so obviously RunFit, I discuss my methodology. It resonates with people. They love it. They read it. And then now I get, people just signing up for my online membership, or they'll basically send me an email and they say, Nick, I want you to coach me. They'll basically say, oh my goodness, like I now recognize all the mistakes that I was making. I want you to help me. So, it means that it's just made it so much easier and I get to work with dream clients. So yeah, it's been wonderful.
At what point were you able to step away from teaching?
I would say that would be the end of this year, actually. So, I kind of, because literally RunFit, as you'd aware, is actually quite young. So I released it probably 4 months ago. I committed earlier on. COVID meant that I lost all my runners. So I went from obviously everyone, basically went, oh, heck, I've got to stop doing all the luxuries and stuff. And so I fortunately could still teach. So I went back and I was teaching more. As we've worked out of it, they've all come back to me flooding in, plus some, which is, great. But I'd already committed through to teaching just the Friday till the end of the year. And so, I basically get to, go have a hoot with the students at a school that irony of it is it's where I was first a PE teacher. So it's just a lovely school to go back to. Like I've got, close connections there. So I really enjoy it, but I'm so ready for basically, to take it on full time. So
yeah, I love it.
End of the year.
And from what I'm aware, going through the program, you actually doubled your fees. How did that come about?
Yeah, I loved your kind of advice, basically to, I guess originally, probably a little bit of backstory, I could do the maths on it. And I was doing the maths and I'm like, it just doesn't pay. So I knew I had to shift my fees up, but I started to get the results with clients. And so then I basically just consistently shifted the fees up. And so from there, what you mentioned in one of the workshops was basically the rule of 3 no's. So, push your prices up until you start getting the no's. And so I sort of tried that. And then basically it means that, I've been able to double them. A few athletes are like, Nick, you got to charge more for the service that you deliver. And I'm like, yep, I will, all in good time. So, it's cool when some are saying that, but the run space, runners aren't necessarily willing to part with their cash super easily. So I guess that's evolving and that'll continue to evolve, but I'm already, as you said, I've already doubled my fees. So it's good because I can deliver a better service.
And as far as I'm aware, because I heard you mention kind of in the green room that you can now work from anywhere, right? So you've built the business in a way that you've got total location freedom, which is kind of cool and not really what you think about, right? You'd imagine, run coach, there's someone there with a stopwatch, someone running around in circles, tracking their time. Talk to us a bit about the product development and the design that got you to the point where, you're free from geography.
Yeah. So that's exactly what people think that I do as a running coach, that I'm, out taking sessions. But what I'm actually doing is I'm looking at basically taking someone from where they are now to where they want to go to in a running sense. And it's all delivered through online coaching software. I use specifically a program called Training Peaks at the moment. And so I can basically, because of the smartwatches and the technology these days, I basically plan different runs for a runner. It downloads to their smartwatch, and then they can basically go and do it. And then as soon as they finish, it uploads. So pretty quickly I can see, for instance, if you've been running in the Blue Mountains near home, you'd be having your coffee at home, and it would already be on my computer for me to be able to analyze and see what you've done, where you've run. So I've got runners that I coach locally. Obviously, I've got coached runners interstate, and then I've got runners overseas. And so it literally doesn't matter where you are. I can basically assist you and help you obviously finish with a smile. So that is different from a lot of other running coaches who are geographically bound because their coaching is all in a run session. So I've really looked and used, I guess, my background as a teacher to actually go, well, how can I deliver this through an online environment or an online almost classroom, if you like? And so I've basically got a range of videos on there in terms of those different areas. So the game plan, the mindset, the skills, and the fitness. I deliver like a coach talk every week on a Thursday to assist people where they can just ask any questions on a Zoom session. There's basically strength videos in there. I have run blockbusters where basically I get people in from outside of my area of knowledge. So we've had previously dietitians presenting on energy dependency in sport. We've got a sleep professor, we've got sports psychologists coming to talk with the runners. It's fantastic because these are things that they can't get access to on their own. And I'm really able to provide it through the online membership and the program that I've built out.
And what's been the feedback like in the sense of the value? Because to me, that sounds like the first sort of shift where you're delivering value without you being involved in the delivery, right?
Oh, 100%. So it's me basically being able to unpack my IP to assist people and actually give them the knowledge and the guidance to be able to almost coach themselves. So down the track, they've been through the process and they've seen what I've been able to do, and they can actually then have a better understanding of it. So for me, that education is really key and cornerstone. So obviously there's a lot of value in the training plan, but there's also value in everything else that I've been able to build in, which is that holistic approach. So it's not only about the training plan, which is, I guess, where, a lot of people or a lot of running coaches focus. But for me, it's actually also about assisting in the other areas, which are absolutely paramount to the athlete's success.
Yeah, I love it. And you've now been featured in some pretty cool publications relevant to the sport. Just walk us through some of the profile. How did that happen? Because again, it's a very proactive, outbound, specifically want to feature in some certain publications, and others it just comes, and it just depends on the stage of the journey. I'm just wondering how that played out.
Yeah, totally. I was, we'd gone through the cornerstone and the principles, and I guess probably to go right back on my first website, I didn't even want to blog, okay, because I was like, why would anyone want to hear from me? I thought you just stuck a page based saying this is what I do, and then people would buy it. Okay, so I've had the full transition in terms of my knowledge. So originally I wouldn't necessarily assist someone unless they asked for it. I'm like, why would people want to hear from me? So I basically had to I'm now okay with that. I'm like, well, I put content out all the time. Like I've, got the blog going, I've got the books, etc. So I was like, well, why on earth would I necessarily want to feature in a magazine? So I had nothing. And I went, well, what one would I like to feature in? And so it was kind of a no-brainer then that Trail Running Mag was the one where my audience was hanging out. And so I basically approached them and said, look, I'm a coach. This is something that I can contribute. And, would you be interested in publishing it? And obviously they want content to publish. Fortunately, I coach a photographer. And so I'm like, hey, mate, we got to go do a photo shoot. So we went and got the photos. I wrote the article, submitted to them, and suddenly it's in there. So, but since then, I've been in contact with them. So I just really built out that industry connection, and, they've got me to, I was, a partner with Adventure Films and Run Nation Film Festival. Sort of came as a result of that, where they had like basically a short ad that went before all the Run Nation Film Festivals all around Australia. So it was on the big screen, which was pretty awesome. And then I've actually hosted the premiere event in Adelaide for the last 2 years now. So yeah, cool stuff comes from it.
That's cool, brother. That's cool. Hey, you're also big on, you're a member of B1G1, this idea of giving back and contribution. It's obviously something that's pretty close to my heart. Can you just walk through to someone listening, like, where did that spark come from, that idea of being up to something beyond making money? And I know your key focus is trees. Just walk us through how that came together.
So I guess if I look back to, as I said, when I started in business, I didn't have money as such. Okay. So I'd always been a volunteer in the sense of volunteering my time. So I'm actually really heavily involved in my local triathlon club, the Lakers Triathlon Club. I'm on the committee. And so that had always been my volunteer. And I kind of always thought it was cool, like that philanthropy idea or the contribution. And then, yeah, basically, you sort of shared how, when I saw how Dent was doing it, I went, that's actually really cool. It doesn't have to be when I'm a success down the track. I can do it now. And so I built it into a part of the systems and the processes that I use with my business. And I started small. And basically from there, obviously following like the 1%, I started at that point, and then as the business
unpack the 1% a bit, because I don't think everyone listening would know what you mean by that.
For sure. So obviously, well, basically there's, I guess a core group of businesses around the world now that's fortunately growing, that really contributes 1% of their profit to assisting, worthy global causes through the global goals. There's, I've chosen to do that through B1G1, which I'm a member of, which stands for Buy One, Give One. And yeah, basically there's all different sorts of projects that you can sort of contribute to. And for me, the natural one was basically, I love being out in nature. I think that climate action and the global warming is a massive challenge. And so I kind of looked at, well, what can we do as a business that will really, be in sync with what we stand for, which to me was to plant trees, because it solves both of those sort of in one area. So at the moment we've planted over 1,561, I think it is, trees. And yeah, basically I look forward to the day that's 1 million. That's cool. They've been planted all around the world. So that's sort of, I guess it's that warm fuzzy, but it also means that, down the track, ultra runners and trail runners, endurance athletes will always have somewhere to train and to go and, play and have that adventure, because we've just been, sorry, mate. Yeah, basically we've been able to, plant trees so we can have those open spaces and have those natural environments for everyone to be able to, go for.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. I'd love to, so I don't do endurance sport, but I do business, and sometimes it feels like the same thing. I think it could be a challenge, and it can certainly push one to one's limits, especially when things aren't going well. Do you see, because obviously you do a bunch of coaching with our clients as well, do you see a crossover in terms of the coaching that you do with endurance athletes and like trying to get someone to push through that mental barrier of like 50Ks or 100Ks and entrepreneurship and business? Like, what do you see as the overlap?
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of that's almost like my secret weapon I see, in the sense, for me personally, I'm used to having to run an ultra marathon. You have to put in place steps months and months before you actually want to arrive at your destination or your goal race. And so you've got to basically take daily action, doing potentially small tasks that collectively add up over a long period of time. And so that's what's really enabled me to have success in my business. Okay. But for those that I work with, what I find is that that's the bit that I love. It's with athletes, I've got to go, well, where are they now and where are they trying to get to? And then outline that path for them to travel along. And because I've been there in their shoes before, I know the key stumbling blocks and I know the mistakes they're potentially going to make. And I can then say, well, actually, you think that's going to be like the key, and they're often wanting to get ahead of themselves. And I'm like, no, come on, we've got to come back here. We've got to put in place this foundational knowledge or this foundational asset to be able to then progress down the line for that. And so really that's where the two go hand in hand, because I'm just looking at where they are now and where they want to get to. Basically what they've already got in their repertoire, and then being able to guide them on what their single next step that they have to do that will get them towards it, rather than necessarily looking all the way down to the track to what they want to achieve, actually going, well, you can achieve this next tiny asset or this next tiny development goal. Do that in the next week or the next 2 weeks or next month, and then come back to me and then we'll do the next bit. And so that's how they work, just hand in hand.
What if you could go back and give yourself some feedback, right? If you go back and give yourself a bit of an uppercut and say, oi, don't do it this way, do it that way. Well, what would you do differently? No regrets, of course, but if we had a time machine, you could go and whisper in your ear and shape the past, what would you do differently?
I probably would have started earlier. That in the sense of like, I'm glad that obviously we discussed it earlier. I actually, at the time, it was a really stressful situation. Like I didn't have a job. I didn't know where I was going to get money from. And I went, okay, well, I'm going to coach. And so that was great to push me then, but I'm worried if that didn't happen. Like it was the biggest blessing in disguise. So if that hadn't happened, I'd potentially, still be teaching. And, I love teaching. I mean, I still see myself as a teacher every single day. I just get to work with runners and I get to work with obviously, business owners. But fundamentally, yeah, at the end of the day, I get to go and run. I get to go and, take run camps, and I get to develop resources. I get to do videos. I get to do podcasts. I get to build stuff. I get to write books. I get to write vlogs, I get to do cool stuff. So, like my partner's got, Amber's got a freaking fantastic job. Like she's, the South Australian government's doing some awesome stuff, writing curriculum resources. And she's managing that, but she still sees what I do and she's like, I want to do what you're doing. So yeah, it's fun, which is probably comes back to my motto to a certain degree.
And what's the motto?
Enjoy the adventure, embrace the challenge, and always have fun.
Oh, mate. I love it. It's like, should we end there? That's perfect. But no, I want to, I should have asked you that at the end. What's next? What are the next steps? What's the future look like?
Yeah, the future of business. It's like you guys have you've opened my eyes to what's possible. I think I was in the room and everyone's like, you're thinking too small, Nick, you're thinking too small. And I've finally kind of, I've started to understand, well, not started to, I now understand business principles. So it's sort of then when you understand the business principles, you kind of go, oh, cool. Okay. Now I can see where I'm going. I've just got to build it as I go along. So really, I'm going to build out the run club continually and the ultra club. One's for road runners, one's for ultramarathon runners. I can see that getting to, 1,000 members will be fantastic, but I dare say it's going to go a lot bigger than that. And that will down the track potentially end up sort of rolling into an app for on the phone, which will just enable even more runners to, have that success and follow the methodology. There's actually another book in the pipeline. So I know it all in my head. I just haven't got the time yet to put it down. So that's going to come out down the track. The other exciting thing is that actually it's really dangerous when I go running because that's when I get to do a lot of thinking time. If I'm on my own running, I'm either thinking about running or I'm thinking about business or I'm reading a book and I'm thinking about that. And I've now got what I think I'll end up launching is probably sort of a 2-year goal, but a YouTube basically channel, which I'm not going to sort of say too much, but yeah, basically that's probably my thing that I'm super excited about. And then I dare say long-term, I have always actually wanted to, at the moment I plant the trees, but down the track, as business continues to grow and scale, obviously 1% can end up being a lot bigger as your business gets bigger. And I'd actually love to, end up purchasing land and actually creating not necessarily a national park, but a conservation park. And so basically, restoring the land and putting, planting the trees back on there and, putting the paths through there so that runners and cyclists can go and enjoy it and, having it so that school groups can come and actually learn about, being in nature and that sort of thing, which is probably going back to a bit of my outdoor ed there. But yeah, that's kind of, I see myself doing that as, an old guy walking around with a walking frame. So when I can't run the trails, I'll just watch the others go and enjoy it. And I'll just be able to go for a wander through the bush and sit on a bench. So yeah.
I love it, mate. If people want to reach out and get in contact, how can they?
Yeah, for sure. So I've got my website. So basically I've got the run journey for the road runners. I've got the ultra journey for the trail runners, and I've actually got the Kona journey for the triathletes amongst us, which is kind of just sitting on the back burner. I obviously focus on the other two a bit more. And yeah, then I'm more active on Facebook. I find that's where basically, that's where my runners are. So that's where my tribe is. And so I've got the RunFit community, or the RunFit Runners community, which is basically a group on there that people can also, if they're keen, can jump on. But I've got, contact details on all my websites. If people want to send me an email, there's the contact forms there.
Beautiful. And that motto you mentioned, what was it again? And where did that come from? How did you develop that?
I don't know. It just kind of, I guess it just was it was my core essence. So I guess something I haven't mentioned, when I went through uni, I actually did outdoor education, which, I wanted to be obviously a coach. And so I did the teaching, because I needed a job at the end. And so I thought, the job would be the PE teaching, but I actually managed to pair it with outdoor education. And I kind of did that for myself, because I just love being outdoors, going on adventures. And so really that's what I see every run is actually an adventure. And so that adventure was really paramount. I've then always loved pushing my comfort zones. And so that ability to challenge yourself through your athletic endeavors, challenge yourself through your business endeavors. So that's where the challenge came from. And then if it's not fun, I basically don't do it. So, fun, obviously, I see writing a book as fun. I love it. I love, everything that I do. So, fun doesn't necessarily have to be, purely going out and, going to a cafe or that sort of thing. So fun is everything that I do. So it ended up kind of just working its way out. And I just sort of started to find that I was saying literally that, enjoy the adventure, embrace the challenge, always have fun. And I guess that's what I live by.
Nick Muxlow, dude, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for just doing what you do. Thanks for helping clients through the program, and I guess also just thanks for the amount of work you do with your clients, helping them redefine what's possible. I can imagine that to bust through those limits and do something that someone never thought that they could do, that they never thought was possible, as a result of the work you do would be pretty damn rewarding, mate. So thank you for bringing that light to the world, brother. I appreciate you.
No worries. Thanks for having me on, Glenn. Been a blast.